And also, it's, as I said, it's mirrored by many, many other events all over the world. There's a lot of similarities between this, what I call the Nottinghamshire Roswell, and it's the eponymous original, the Roswell incident in 1947. A lot of similarities between the two. I mean, I suppose this does beg the question. I mean, I was talking earlier about the fact that, you know, you're not going to get a lot of UFO incidents like this, crashes in populated areas, because, like I say, most of the world is unpopulated. But they do happen in populated areas. And the answer is, I mean, if the government can successfully cover up a crash retrieval in a place like the Hatchfield district, where I said there's 11,000 people living within a few square miles, where couldn't they cover one up? I mean, this is because one thing the skeptics will say, like, oh, look, if something like this happens in the middle of a city, it's going to be all over. The secret, they can't possibly keep that secret. Too many people will see it. And but I do, unfortunately, I do wonder if you control certain flows of information and you have a healthy understanding of human psychology, and you've used that and you've weaponised it, which is what the government have. I actually do wonder if the government could successfully cover up a UFO landing. You know, the day the Earth stood still style, even, or a crash, like as I just described, in a densely populated area. Imagine, for instance, if you were walking down the street, well, not us specifically because we're very in on the issue, but if you didn't know much about UFOs and you weren't into them, and you'd already been conditioned by the media to regard them as stupid and something epiphenomenal that you just got to make big jokes out of, and you see a crash saucer come down, right, in the middle of Trafalgar Square or something in London, you think, oh my God, that's a flying saucer, isn't it? And you go home to, and then before you know it, the police are like moving in and saying, "Move on, ladies and gentlemen, move away, please, move away."
Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here, And then you find out the Trafalgar Square is all shut and all the traffic's been diverted. And you go home and you switch on the TV. That's that flying saucer that landed there. And then you hear the newsreader comes on and said, "Strange, an unusual event happened in London today. A child's bouncy castle blown in the wind took off and managed to land in Trafalgar Square. Luckily, no one was hurt. But this has raised more questions about the safety aspects of these bouncy castles." You say, "Oh, right. I mean, it's possible you would deny your senses, and you deny your memory, and you deny your common sense." As I said, these media people who run the media, they know about human psychology. They study the way our minds work. They know how to manipulate us. It's quite possible that we could have an Orwellian doublethink situation where someone actually would simply say, "Oh, that's what it must have been."
When an authoritative figure tells you this, it's your condition to you should trust them, to trust what they're telling you.
It's quite chilling, actually. Are you familiar with the Milgram experiment? For what viewers who don't know what this is, psychological experiment. They bring a chap into a room. There's a guy in a white coat, a doctor, sitting behind a desk, and there's a row of buttons. Yes, there's a row of buttons which say 100 volts, 200 volts, 300 volts, 1,000 volts. And say, "Right, so sit there, sir. Could you press the one on the left?" This blood-curdling scream from the next room, from behind the screen.
When they ask him a question, they've got wrong. They told him to press to electrocute him, something like that, and it got higher.
But it did, and you said, "What happened?" "Oh, you just gave that guy an electric shock." "Press the next button, please." And the idea was whenever the person protested, because the person behind the screen would be screaming louder and louder and begging and saying, "Stop, please stop." So you'd be torturing this person effectively. Whenever the subject turned around and said, "I don't want to do this, I think we should stop," the doctor, who's not really a doctor, said, "Just continue with the experiment."
50% of the subjects obey the experimenter's commands fully in the experiment depicted in this film.
165 volts. Time. That guy's howling in there.
Continue, please. Go on.
he's got a heart condition there. You want me to go?
Just continue, please.
Sharp. Axe, needle, stick, blade. Answer, please. Wrong. I'm up to 180 volts.
Please continue, teacher.
Needle, you're gonna get a shock. 180 volts.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of
Can't
here.
stand it. I'm not gonna kill that man in there. You hear him hollering? He's
As I
dying.
said before, the shocks may be painful, but
Yeah,
they're not
but he's in
dangerous.
there hollering. He can't stand it. What if something happens to him?
The experiment requires that you continue, teacher.
Yeah, but I'm not going to get that man sick in there. I mean, he's in there hollering.
It's absolutely essential that you continue, teacher.
There's too many left here, and I mean, geez, he gets wrong here. There's too many of them left. I mean, who's going to take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman?
I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please.
All right, next one, slow. Wrong. Answer is neck. 300 volts.
Ow! I absolutely refuse to answer anymore. Get me out of here. You can't hold me here. Get me out. Get me out of here.
Continue. The next word is green, please.
Green, grass, hat, ink, apple. I can't go on, he won't answer.
If the learner doesn't answer in a reasonable time, about 4 or 5 seconds, consider the answer wrong and follow the same procedures you have been doing for wrong answers. Say wrong, tell them the number of volts, give them the punishment, read them the correct answer. Continue, please.
Something's happened to that man in there. Nice one, gold, dollar, necklace, moon, paint. Something's happened to that man in there. You better check in on him, sir. He won't answer me or nothing.
Please continue. Go on, please.
You accept all the responsibility?
The responsibility is mine. Correct. Please go on.
Grave, woman, soldier, dog, horse. Answer is woman, 450 volts. That's it.
Now continue using the last switch on the board, please. The 450 switch for each wrong answer. Continue, please.
I'm not getting no answer.
Please continue. The next word is white. Whether the learner likes it or not, we
But
must...
he might be dead in there. I mean, some people can't take the shock, sir.
Please
I mean, I
continue.
don't have to be rude, but I mean, I think you should look in on him.
We must continue. Go on, please.
You're going to keep giving him, what, 450 volts every shot now?
That's correct. Continue. The next word is white.
White, 450 volts. Next one is short. Sentence, movie, spurt, time.
All right, excuse me, teacher. We'll have to discontinue the experiment. I'd like to ask you a few questions, if I may.
How do you feel, by the way?
I feel all right, but I don't like what's happened to that fellow in there. He's been howling, and we had to keep giving him shocks. I didn't like that one bit. I mean, he wanted to get out, and he just kept going, kept throwing 450 volts. I didn't like that. He wouldn't even look at on that gentleman.
Well, who was actually pushing the switch?
I was. But he kept insisting. I told him no, but he said he got to keep going. I told him it's time we stopped when we got up to 195, 210 volts.
Well, why didn't you just stop?
He wouldn't let me. I wanted to stop.
Stanley Milgram, the guy who first came up with the idea, he theorised that maybe 3/4 of people would be willing to go to and press the last button, a bright red button, which gives you which is a fatal shock. And shockingly, over 90% of people were willing to go through with it. Only less than 10% of people actually refused. The reason was because there was an authority figure, a doctor. They thought someone they thought was a doctor telling them. There was a similar experiment in the NHS actually, where they actually phoned up a ward. I mean, there was no one was any danger because it was all controlled. But someone had phoned up and pretended to be like a consultant of some subject and told a nurse to give one of their patients what this nurse was a drug, which the dosage that the consultant demanded would have been lethal. And the nurse said, "Are you sure? Could you repeat that, doctor? What was the medication again?" And he repeated it and said, "No, give them that dosage. Could you repeat the dosage?" And the nurse was like really scared, but again, in most cases, the nurse went and did it.
It goes to show that most people on authority would go for killing someone.
Exactly, no one was in any danger.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
the actual drug that the doctor was talking about was actually just a placebo. It was just water, and she injected water, but she thought she was injecting a lethal dose of this drug. Isn't it scary, though, isn't it?
Yeah, very scary.
To think how many people are that obedient, even in the face of.
Yeah.
And that explains why, when oppressive regimes comes about, you get the concentration camp guards. You get the Gulag warders.
Yeah.
You get the capos.
Yeah.
This is why how many people say, well, they'd never do that, but people would. All they had to do is for this Freudian father figure in Westminster or in the White House to say, do it, and people do the most incredible things. This is the way they designed it, and the government wants us that way. And it's quite awful. It's quite an awful situation. And
so once you know that, you know the idea of them authority dismissing a UFO that a person would have seen really close up, they could do that.
Yeah.
They could condition, whole
conditioning,
people,
it's conditioning.
people to think, oh, nothing to worry about. Yeah.
if
So
people are the kind of people who watch television, they'll watch the mainstream news and they'll believe it. People believe the most astonishing things on the mainstream news.
Even in the next breath they'll say, I don't believe anything on the news, but then they'll go and do exactly that.
And believe it.
You know.
They will watch with a straight face, and usually will say, two planes hit a building, the building's a little cloud of dust. Oh, we found the passport of one of the hijackers.
Oh yeah.
They'll say that with a completely straight face, and the people watching them go,
Well, no black boxes found.
I know,
Passport found. Amazing.
it's like, it appeals, the media is designed to do this, it's designed to appeal to our base emotions and shut down the logical parts of our minds. And so I believe that they would say, oh, it's a child's bouncy castle.
Exactly,
And I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and we've had the eating, and that is the Nottinghamshire Roswell, as they call it. And also there's others, I mean, there's the Virginia incident of 1996. This was there was a crash retrieval, there was a craft that came down. The craft was actually in an area in the countryside in Brazil. This happened in Brazil in 1996. But so there were some creatures that came, so that were up to 3 to 4 beings, biological entities, actually got away from the craft before the forces got there, the government got there. And they were seen wandering around the city of Virginia. It's incredible.
It's crazy.
Have you had that
I've vaguely, but I know there's been quite a few things in Brazil, haven't there? Brazil's been
Brazil is actually a hotbed of these sort of things. And Brazil seems to get all the nasty ones as well. The ones where people, it's horrible, and people die and all kinds of horrible things happen. For some reason,
It's awful,
But this Virginia incident is incredible. It was like these aliens. I mean, this is there's many witnesses to this. There's 3 young girls, saw this creature just sitting behind a wall, and they saw this creature, and they were terrified. They ran and told their mother. They thought it was the devil. And they said, "Mum, we've just seen the devil." And the mother said, "Well, the mother was a very brave lady. She said, no devil's going to mess with my daughters." And she grabbed her rolling pin. She went to the place, but by that time the creature had gone. But the creature was very distinctive. They described it as having blood red eyes. They saw it quite close up. It had red veins on its skin, on its brown skin. It gave off a powerful smell of ammonia.
I've heard about that.
And I mean, the skeptics came forward and said, "Oh, there's this chap who lives, there's this man who lives in the town, and his nickname is Mordinho, which means the little dumb one, because he can't speak for it. He's got a speech impediment." And the girls, they just saw this. But the thing is that they tracked this guy down, this chap Mordinho. I can't remember what his real name was, and they talked to him, and he's a pretty ordinary looking chap, really. He's a bit short. I mean, you can see he's got something wrong with his legs. He's a bit on the short side. He has trouble walking, and he's a bit hunched. He's got a hunch back. But he's obviously human. And what's more, the girls knew him. Sometimes they give him cigarettes and things like that. They sort of looked after him. He was a bit mentally subnormal. They looked after him. They gave him cigarettes and things. So again, the skeptics will come up with something, but then they'll say these things which are just not true and provably false, but they'll just hang on to them. This is the lighthouse at Rendlesham Forest. It was dismantled. This was demolished literally minutes after it was first proposed. But again, the skeptics will come back to it. I went to a talk in London by a guy called Dr. Ian Ridpath a few months ago, and he was the original publisher of this theory, and he sat there in this. It's called the Fortean Society of London. And he gave the story about the lighthouse at the Rendlesham Forest, and I was dumbstruck. Everyone was sitting there listening to him and took him seriously, and which was to me bizarre and frustrating. Very frustrating.
Gary Heseltine wanted on this
Yeah.
morning. Is it French? What's his
Chris
name?
French,
Chris
yeah.
French, yeah. Skeptic, and I mean, Gary just completely blitzing with it. You know,
Yeah.
but hey ho.
That was a good interview, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
The moment
Yeah.
we get these things get a fair hearing, it becomes very obvious. But unfortunately, really, the mainstream doesn't cover this sort of thing at all. When they do, they make a joke out of it.
Yeah.
This is how it's not just for fun. I mean, you know, when you get like the novelty story at the end of the news.
Yeah.
And finally tonight, people have been seeing flying saucers around Shrewsbury.
It is, isn't it? It's always
Look at
like,
us.
And
yeah.
then someone above the frame will dangle like a toy alien in front of the newsreader, and everyone in the studio will have a big laugh. Thank you very much.
But this is the
Here's
level,
Tom with the weather.
This is the level
Yeah.
that it is at, though, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah.
And that has an effect. That's not just done. Oh, obviously the people in the studio aren't quite actively trying to just disinform the public, but the people who design these programs are.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because we've got like I'm very curious to see what happens now, because now one of the curses of ufology is there's like a long gap between when something happens and when research begins. In the case of of Roswell, it was 31 years, and that means that basically when researchers went to the area and started talking to witnesses and looking for physical evidence, there was people's memories had become distorted. Some of the witnesses had died. A lot of them were very old.
Yeah.
But we have an event. I want to bring this up because you mentioned it before, didn't you? There's a very similar event to I mentioned the Berwyn Mountains event, which is very similar to the Nottinghamshire case, which took place in North East Wales in 1974. There's been a more recent one, also in Wales, that took place in January 2016. And this is I've been in touch with the people involved in this, the researchers and the principal witness, and it sounds like this is another crash retrieval. I think it's a CE2, close encounter the second time, and a crash retrieval, and it's really quite an incredible event. I mean, so this lady Kaz Clark, which I don't know what her real name is, but that's what she calls herself. Understandably, she's protecting her identity.
Of course,
You know, I don't blame her in the slightest. The number of people I come up to me at the hospital when I was a porter there, well, there was one person in particular said, "Oh, I've seen these things. I've seen them, but I don't tell anyone. I'll tell you privately. Don't let anyone else know." And partly it's the giggle factor, of course, because no one wants to be made a joke out of it. But it can also affect your career, especially if you're in something, for example, aviation. Suppose you're a pilot. There's a stigma that's perhaps easing slightly, but you know, a lot of pilots will not want to say anything in case they get grounded.
Excuse the pun, but
But this event, but Kaz, or whatever her real name is, she's a very, very brave lady. She's a lady with a family, she's got children, you know, she doesn't want any trouble, but she's speaking out. And she said, you know, that she was, well, first thing again, she saw planes flying over, a lot of aircraft, military aircraft, helicopters, and flying over a few days beforehand. And again, you had this idea that they knew something was going to happen somewhere in that area. And apparently they were going all over the Bristol Channel between Devon as well, the Seven Seas it's called in Wales. They were flying all over across the Severn Sea between the southwest of England and South Wales, as if they knew something was going to happen somewhere in that area. Again, how? How do they know? That's the question. And then she was out in her garden with her friends, and literally she lives on the side of a big hill, at Penturk, which is north of Cardiff. And this thing appeared, this pyramid-shaped, dark, with lights all over it. It just appeared out of a cloud of mist, and lightning came from it, touching the ground. And then there was other lights. There was like green lights coming out.
That's right.
Green and red.
And there was these, again, you have the loud explosion. And then all kinds of weird things were happening at this place called Smilog Woods, near Llantysands, right next to this Royal Glamorgan Hospital. And it was interesting because there was a lot of witnesses at the hospital, because this happened like late at night. And in hospitals there's always a lot of people around late at night, which is good. And there was some of the patients, some of the staff said they heard a huge explosion. And this was reported, but And it turns out, there was a military exercise in the area. The thing about this, no one can actually find any mention of this beforehand. Whereas if there was a large military exercise, obviously involving detonating live ordnance in that area, although why you do that in a populated area when there's a safety issue, things like that. Everyone will know beforehand. They would tell people. They'd have to ask permission, and they'd have to warn the public, and the local authorities would have to take precautions. The police would have to probably close off some areas. None of this happened.
No.
So I'd say that the story of the military exercise was a cover story.
Definitely, yeah.
This was the crash helicopter equivalent.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? So the good news is, this is the good news is that this is one people are getting on top of straight away. The Swansea UFO Network are researching this now, which means you don't have this frustrating gap between the event happening and research beginning this time, which is really good. So I've got to pay my respects definitely to Sufon and to Kaz for speaking out.
Definitely.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, do you
Go on.
an issue? A friend that went around the area. Was it a couple of days after? There was military there, weren't they? Saying they're from Vodafone.
That's right.
Oh, that was weird.
With guns.
Yeah, with guns. But from Vodafone.
There's these really weird people. Luckily I know a lady who's an archaeologist, and she was looking into this, and she said, because these people, there were three cover stories. Firstly, they said they were researching fracking.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
And then they were archaeologists. Then they were from Vodafone.
Yeah.
They were really weird people who walked around in these strange luminous jackets with weird insignia on. And they weren't military uniforms, but they had weapons. They had these big jackets, and they were tooled up underneath.
Yeah.
They had concealed holsters, and they thought, oh God. According to my friend who's an archaeologist, she said that they got equipment that looks like they were doing a geophysical survey of the area. Why? One wonder why. And this was just straight after this event.
Yeah.
And then they give you three different stories about who they are and what they're doing there.
Yeah.
I think there's some kind of special unit that probably the Ministry of Defence have for doing this. There's a lot of reports, people like Clifford Stowe and Michael Salas say the government actually employ special detachments and special organisations for dealing with this kind of extraterrestrial events. That's what I think is going on.
Yeah, it seems very likely, doesn't it?
It does,
Like I said, when you eliminate everything else, what you're left with.
That's right. Even you said about the trees and stuff like that. There's also in that one there's
Yeah,
the tree damage on there as well.
Yeah.
You see, in Smilog Woods, there's definitely some sign that something weird has happened there. There's damage to the trees if a large object has crashed into those trees.
And yet all the trees undamaged, weren't they? And
there's a sign there's been a fire there.
Yeah, split trees, weren't they?
And,
it's weird, isn't it? Yeah, the trees are split, and there's piles of broken wood, broken branches and things in areas. It looks like there's been a clearing. And again, that area was sealed off. All the scrap metal, because this is like in an urban area. Again, this is very similar. It's in an urban area. Lots of people around. It's a highly populated area. Llantrisant is a big town. But like in any big town, these woods, they get used for fly tipping and things like that. And there's the same problem around in Oxford. And you go in some of the woods near Oxford, there's burnt out cars and old TV sets and things like that. And you think, oh God. And everyone's going on back to the council to clear it up. And I says, well, we don't have the resources available to clear this up right now, I'm afraid. Yeah, in Smilog Woods, it's had total clear out. And Kaz was reporting that, they've been piling up old bits of metal, rusty bathtubs, old cars. They got right in there and they got rid of everything. And this is exactly the same as Nottingham.
Yeah.
Well, they dug up the topsoil.
Yeah.
They've done exactly this, and they want to get rid of every piece of. They've searched those woods from top to bottom. You know why? Debris from the UFO.
Yeah.
And and that's weird. After years and years of saying they couldn't clear it up, they've now gone and they cleared up everything. So obviously, they've got a reason to now. So there's a lot of parallels between these different events.
Indeed.
And you see, this book is fascinating. It's a shame actually that it's so expensive and so rare. But for instance, there's several here in Wales. There's one here, 1965, Llandegla. I'm not sure exactly where Llandegla is, but
What's it pronounced then?
Yeah,
it's a Welsh strange
Welsh,
language like that. Yeah, that's where I come from. Yeah, but there's Cheadle, Staffordshire, But also, I mean, the Llandegla cases I had a look at because I was before you got here, because we were going to talk about Wales.
Yeah.
What happened was, there's like a guy reports that some object came down and hit the ground in a valley near this place at Llandegla, and a journalist trying to get some information on this. This was released. This report was released as part of the government, but he wanted to get more. How did the government, the MOD, follow up this event? Because there was no official UFO desk in 1965, but they were still investigating UFO sightings for the RAF. And the response was, this is exempt from the Freedom of Information Act request due to reasons of national security. So there was something done.
Yeah.
There was a follow-up piece that the government did over that incident, but there was no way that they were going to release that information. This is after what, 50 plus years? Ridiculous. And this is interesting. Dalnegorsk. This was actually in 1988 in Russia.
All right. Yeah.
This is quite a famous one. This was, where the large numbers of people saw this. This came down in a park in Russia. And there was some creatures. There was like some strange creatures seen. It was rather like the day the Earth stood still. But it was a very famous.
Was this in like a theme park or like a children's park? What kind of?
Near children's playground type of thing. Yeah. And it was very, very weird. Weird case, but you get this. You get the same thing. And this was in 1988. Like I said, this was during the time when it was the Soviet Union. It was Russia, Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same thing happened. I feel that what we're dealing with here is a worldwide policy. So for whenever these sort of things happen, there's no deviation from it. There is the same thing happens. The government seal it off. They call in the military. They get rid of the evidence and they put out a cover story, or they just pretend nothing happened. That happens every single time in every country.
Yeah,
and we have things as far as there's
patterns formed, isn't it?
Yeah, we have them in Wales. We have them in France. We have them in Hawaii. Brazil, of course, I mentioned.
Yeah.
We have them in Norway and in parts of Africa. The same thing happens. Very strange. And apparently, there were some people in the Virginia incident. The funny thing is, the Virginia incident appears to have been badly handled. It was quite amateurish. So, for example, they took the creature to a hospital, to a local hospital. There were a lot of witnesses there. Saw this creature come into the hospital. Then they moved it to another local hospital. That the police and the army and apparently the police and the army and the fire brigade dealt with it. And they're organisationally connected in Brazil. And then it was then that the Americans stepped in and they dealt with it. And some of the people in Brazil were annoyed at that because they didn't know that this policy was in place. But it seems like people higher up got involved after the creature was retrieved. Apparently, the creature was taken to a local military academy and was kept there eventually.
Was the creature still alive at this point? Or was it?
Yeah, I mean, apparently the creatures were still alive. There was at least 3 were captured. There was a 4th one that apparently got away, but it was seen later. It was seen a few months later in the area. But several people got ill. I mean, there was one young chap.
Yeah, that's a bit. I heard. Yeah, people got. Yeah.
Young one chap. I remember his name. He was a policeman, and his name was, I can't remember his name. He was only 21. He's a fit guy, you know. He was in the police. He'd done his training. He'd done training and stuff like that. So and he came down with a mysterious illness, and he died of some kind of infection, and he was buried. And the family wanted to know what happened to him, and
naturally, yeah.
of course, and they tried to get grave exhumed and another autopsy done because there was no proper path report released. They wanted another post-mortem done. And they wanted more. They wanted basically a proper coroner's inquest into this. And do you know what the government said? They blocked it. The government blocked this, which is the only reason they do that is if there's something to hide about why that chap died. Apparently this guy was in direct contact with this alien. Apparently several people in contact with this alien fell ill, and there were several deaths, as if the alien had some kind of disease or some kind of contaminant was deadly to humans. And maybe it was some kind of weapon the creature used to defend itself. I don't know. But the Brazilian case, the Americans stepped in. Apparently, this thing was shipped off to the States. So it seems like the United States is often deferred to in these cases. There was another event in South Africa in 1989 which is very interesting indeed, because Tony Dodd, the great ufologist, he actually managed to get some information. He actually managed to bluff his way into talking to someone quite high up in the South African military.
Okay.
And he basically blagged. He basically phoned them up and started blagging and saying he was quite clever actually. I mean, he's a former policeman himself. And he's quite a clever chap. And he ended up talking to some general or something, and this general gave him all kinds of information about this thing that came down in the Kalahari Desert in the north part of South Africa, or into some of the other countries nearby. This was a disc with these strange creatures, and these creatures apparently were he described quite clearly. And then again the Americans stepped in and they took everything away. So so basically, this is all part of obviously keeping everything secret.
Yeah.
Because these things would eventually blow the truth about UFOs. You know, and it appears to have been successful. And like I said, as long as this policy is in place and it's acted properly, I can't see it.
It's been largely successful so far, hasn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
As I said, if something came down Trafalgar Square, probably the same thing would happen. They'd probably get away with it. Although there'd be people like you and me who would be talking about it. But as far as the mainstream goes, they'd probably just regard it. It wouldn't be regarded any more than, say, the Roswell incident.
Yeah.
So probably a lot of people would hear about it, but it would be seen as something fringe, which the government would vociferously deny happened. So people would never really take it seriously.
And imagine that the military have already got some procedures in place if it has already happened, if in a major city a craft did come down, they'd have procedures ready for that.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do.
They must have.
Because it's happened. I'm sure they've got a lot of experience with this. I mean, there's a lot of, and this is one of the things I had to, contemplate when I was writing my books. Roswell, Writing a Novel of Disclosure, and Roswell Revealed the World After Disclosure. Available at all good bookshops now. Shameless plug over.
We will do the links as well.
Yeah, and we'll put the covers up.
Oh, thanks, yeah. But I had to consider these sort of things about what this would be like and how it would work. Because one thing you know about the Roswell incident in July 1947, as I explained, this book explains, and you hear from many other sources, it was not the first event of its kind. It was not. I would say it's not the only event of its kind. But it was also definitely not the first.
Yeah.
There were others beforehand. It appears the response from the government to the Roswell incident appears as if they already knew what to do, which means they had experience.
Yeah.
And indeed, there are events recorded before Roswell. There's one in 1941, a very interesting one in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And there's been a couple of others that have been mentioned. The earliest happened in 1897 in Texas.
Yeah, I think I know that one. Yeah.
That rings a bell.
The very famous case of the Aurora incident.
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, and something was hit, like a wind direction thing was hit as well.
Wind pump.
And I think some creatures were found as well in that.
Oh.
They did, and I mean this maybe because of the culture of that time. I mean, they just said it was a man from Mars. They said, but they buried him in a local cemetery, and the grave is still there.
Yeah,
but you can't. The thing is, it's really frustrating because like Jim Mars and several other people did a big study in 1975, and Aurora is a tiny little place in the middle of nowhere and a little village, and suddenly all these ufologists were descending on the area, and they posted guards at the cemetery. They got the police to guard the cemetery. But then, but obviously no one was going to dig the grave up. You can't dig a grave up because of rights of sepulchre laws, which most countries have, including Texas, which means it's a very serious criminal offence to try and dig up someone's grave. And you'd have to get a special court order, an exhumation order, and I mean, they tried to do it, but of course the authorities said no way. And then they went back there a few years later, and it appeared all kinds of weird things. The gravestone had gone, the headstone, and it appeared that the grave had been tampered with. So there was actually probably, because this attention was suddenly on this grave, someone, probably the Men in Black or whoever deals with this, went in there and they took the body away. So the body's probably not there now. But I think all those years there was actually an alien buried in the local cemetery in Texas. They've got a plaque there now commemorating it, and it's and you can actually go there. Although the people there don't want too many visitors, and luckily they don't get that many nowadays.
Yeah.
They did. There was thousands of people there for a while. That was the first. There was actually one a few years before then. I mean, I was talking to this guy called Trent Haggard, who's written a book about this. There was an event, also somewhere in the States, where something came down in the 1870s, I believe.
Right.
I've heard about it.
So that was very interesting. There's only brief reports about that, but it appears that the same thing happened. So how far does this cover-up go back? And it appears that because there were people when the Aurora incident happened in 1997, a large number of the wreckage was taken away. So people turned up. They came from Fort Worth, which is the nearest city, with horses and carts, and they carried away the wreckage, and we don't know what happened to it. But it's quite possible the government were concerned even back then, in the 19th century, because there was the equivalent of the military-industrial complex. There was the equivalent of well, oil was not the principal fossil fuel back then. There was coal was the principal fossil fuel, but there was a fossil fuel industry, which they didn't want disturbed by people back engineering publicly free energy technology, which I think I talked about last time. And the way Nikola Tesla was treated around the same time, the fact that as long ago as 1899, which is just 2 years after the Aurora incident, he was already having some of his work classified, indicates that this cover-up is not new.
Yeah, and it stretches. Covers a lot of.
So it covers the whole world,
and
it's been running for well over a century. Unfortunately, that makes it very, very difficult to break. It's very, very difficult to get there. But I do hope that will come out sometime through the disclosure process, which I do talk about in fiction scenario in my books. And I did consider when I was writing those books how it would come about, what would happen, various other issues associated. But I do bring in the things such as the crash retrieval issue, and I do bring that into the story.
Because it relates to factual events.
It
relates to
definitely. Yeah.
Well, we'll end on this part, but
Right, sure,
fantastic.
Yeah,
Wow.
brilliant, very good start. Thank you very much.
That's right.
It's
Time for another cuppa?
Yeah.
Hello, and thank you very much for watching the video. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, and I hope you did, please give it a little like, and of course subscribe to our channel.
We also have our Facebook account, information is below, and the ways you can fund us is also down below. And remember, let's unite and not to fight.
And together we can unite this planet better. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.